In today's video, we're going to be diving into the upcoming pattern, which features a lot of crazy weather. Major storm systems, multiple of them moving across the nation over the coming weeks. Warmer temperatures will prevail, but as you guys know, it is going to be up and down in some ways. And I have a different map pulled up than we typically look at. This is the day 3 through 7 US hazards outlook. And I just wanted to show this because this is a very busy map, the hazards map for the upcoming few days. And this kind of reflects a lot of what we've been calling for. Heavy snowfall out there for the upper Midwest, Northern Plains, and the Rockies, and the Sierra Nevada mountains. Heavy rainfall for the West Coast. Multiple days of severe weather, as you can see. We have like 1, 2, 3 different days of severe weather expected with our upcoming severe weather outbreak, which is going to be a big point of this video. So I just wanted to show this map because it really shows you how busy things are really going to be. For anybody that's looked at these maps before, you know it is never nearly this busy. This is extremely busy for this type of map. Typically you have 1, 2, maybe 3 hazards going on. We have like 12 here or more. I haven't even counted it up, but I mean, it's a lot. Yeah, even more actually. I think it's closer to 15 or 16 there. So this is just an insanely busy map for the just day 3 through 7 window. This is crazy. Looking at the 6 to 10 day temperature outlook, we can see that these cold temperatures are expected to continue in the west. We call this a negative PNA. We'll talk about this almost every single video, but this forces the warmth up into the central and the eastern states, and we see that happening in a big way here from March 17th through March 21st. As we just take a look at the precipitation pattern during this time frame as well, we can see the south central and deeper south will be a little bit less busy. Keep in mind this is kind of after, for the most part, our thunderstorm event is happening, or severe weather, so it's a little bit of a quieter period here from the 17th through the 21st. But the west doesn't miss a beat. We see continued above average precipitation and a lot of these storms moving up into a lot of the Great Lakes, Midwest, Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, bringing them precipitation as well. 8 to 14 day temperature outlook is not much different. Cold in the west, negative PNA, forces the warmth up, and we see that still in full swing effect by this 19th through 25th outlook. So we're reaching towards the end of the month here. The precipitation, pretty similar. We start to slow down in the southwest, though. We see the northwest is still well above average, though, and this does extend into most of the Rockies. And a lot of the east now, even the further south areas, dealing with above average precipitation for the 19th through 25th. Looking back at the past 14 days, so this does include a little bit of the end of February, the final 2 days, we can see that we're starting to really see a shift towards warmer conditions in the central and eastern states. That has taken place. Today is obviously very, very warm in the east here, and that is going to continue for at least the next few days. And the west is cooling down, so we should over time start to see this become more blue and blue, and these areas should become more red and orange in here. Already the central states are, but it's just going to continue to look that way for the most part. Let's dive into the European model. Again, we are going to really have a focus on this severe weather outbreak that I think could be a very major one. We're going to show you some stuff that we typically don't dive into at the end of the video after the Storm Prediction Center outlook, so stay tuned for that. We have some experimental products, some other model products that try to kind of predict the risk factor of severe weather that we're going to dive into later on. And it suggests that we could be looking at a moderate risk of severe weather. If not, there is even some signs that this could even flirt with a high risk, which is as high as they go. So that is, again, from a more experimental product. And I want you guys to take it with a grain of salt once we get into that. But there is reason to believe that that is a possibility, which is a bit concerning, obviously. Looking at just today, this is going to be around the time you're watching this video, if not a little bit before. We do see our storm systems arriving for the west already. 992 there in Canada, 995 here in Northern California. We are just seeing multiple major lows in this area, and this is bringing heavy rainfall for the coastal and lower areas, and then heavier snowfall for the mountain ranges out there. Really not much else happening this evening, though. And as we take a look at tomorrow afternoon, it's really going to be a lot of the same, except we see more in the way of snowfall and a little bit less in the way of rainfall. We do have some thunderstorms around here for areas like Kentucky, Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Florida, and they do have some sort of thunderstorm and maybe even severe weather risk. So again, Storm Prediction Center outlook at the end. We will kind of dive more into the upcoming days ahead. As we just take a look at Friday, we see that this low starts to move past the Rockies, 975. So the models, as you guys know, for about a week now, probably maybe a little bit less, have been consistent with this low being very, very low. 975 is incredibly low, especially for this time of year and especially for over the plains. This would be comparable to a category 1 or 2 hurricane, probably 2, maybe even bordering on 3. Obviously, the impacts won't be that severe, but it just shows you how intense this storm really is as far as pressure, and I want you guys to have a good idea of that. We do see heavier snowfall here over the Rockies just to the west of that low, and this could bring about some blizzard conditions. Don't be surprised if we see some blizzard warnings go up for certain areas with this system, because we do have intense winds due to that very low pressure, and we have intense snowfall due to really the same thing. So when you combine that together, that can bring blizzard conditions. So we're going to be watching for that very closely. I think the chance is rather elevated in this circumstance. We do see simultaneously another storm system already arriving for the West Coast, so they really don't even catch a break. It'll probably just feel like the same storm is continuing, but it is a brand new low pressure system. Heavy snowfall again for the mountains, rainfall in the coastal and lower areas once more. Let's keep going. I want to take us towards the overnight hour here, and this is when we will have our first day of severe weather. This is going to be, again, overnight Friday into Saturday, where I think we will likely have a widespread slight risk and at least an enhanced risk inside of there, as well as what all indications point towards from the Storm Prediction Center. So day 1 is already going to be a big one. By the time we're reaching towards Saturday afternoon for day 2, this will probably be the most major day of severe weather, where I think we get at least a moderate risk of severe weather in here, especially between Louisiana, Mississippi, and Alabama. Somewhere in here, I mean, if I was to draw an area, I think somewhere in here we end up with at least a moderate risk. And again, we do have some indications that this could even lean even as far as a high risk, which again is as high as it even possibly goes. We do see these from time to time, and in my experience, they do happen in this area quite a bit. So we'll have to watch and see. I mean, the 2 areas where I've seen the most high risks is going to be this kind of deep south pocket, again, from central Louisiana through into central Mississippi and central Alabama. Seems to be just a hot spot for those highest risk events, something like this, even a little bit of southeastern Arkansas in there. And then the other area that I've seen, obviously, a lot of is going to be like from Kansas through portions of Oklahoma and into North Texas. So those are your 2 very hot spots. And that's not to say that major events can't happen outside of there, but just these types of events just tend to be really bad. Let's keep going towards Sunday, because we will likely have at least a slight risk here for portions of the Mid-Atlantic through down into the southeast, even as far as the Florida panhandle here, and probably will extend well into Florida. This is your high temperatures on Sunday, so we're looking at more like the central regions of Virginia, central North Carolina, central South Carolina, and south central Georgia for this time frame. As we move forward just a little bit, we can see the overnight threat is going to be for these coastal areas, and I think that this threat will be present. It might lower the risk a little bit, might lower the intensity, because this is happening at like 3 and 5 a.m. along these coastal areas. But it will still be rather warm, as we had a pretty warm air mass out ahead of it. I would suspect most areas in the upper 50s, if not 60s, which will be enough for those thunderstorms not to fire up and start up, because they're already there. It's going to be enough for them to kind of just glide into the area and retain some of that intensity. Typically upper 50s would not be sufficient for thunderstorm development, but again, they were already there from the daytime temperatures, so I think we will retain some of that energy. Humidity will probably be quite elevated as well, so should be sufficient for continued activity all the way to the coast, potentially overnight into very early on Monday. The GFS model, which we'll look at in a little bit, does have these storms arriving much earlier, like 8 p.m., 11 p.m., which, as we know, is definitely they'll lose very little of their intensity reaching the coast if it's that early in the evening. By Monday afternoon, we see some leftover showers maybe behind that cold front, some cooler temperatures. Monday might be a little bit of a break from the warmth and the overall heat that we've been having. But right as we move into Tuesday, it's already warming back up again. We have a pretty substantial storm system now bringing some snowfall to the Rockies, some showers in the lower areas. No major low associated with this one, but this is quite snowy for Tuesday afternoon on the 18th. Wednesday afternoon, this actually gets worse. We see a 997 developing there over Kansas and Oklahoma. Heavy snowfall for Colorado, Wyoming, New Mexico, perhaps Nebraska as well. This is definitely something to watch for a pretty heavy snowstorm for that area. And also, I would say, watch out for severe weather with this one as well. As we move forward a little bit, we can see it is a little bit limited. This is actually 2 a.m. on Thursday, but we have our low here, and clearly there's some sort of activity happening out ahead of things. We're within 10 days of this, so I think that this is definitely something to watch. Eastern Oklahoma, northern Arkansas, Missouri area could shift a little bit, could become more widespread, so we'll be watching. I think this is a low that we saw in the models a few days ago that had very little precipitation with it, so it is trending in a wetter direction, and I think that that trend could continue. It's going to be something that we pay attention to over the coming days. Definitely not looking like a major or even, obviously a record-breaking low like we're perhaps expecting with this upcoming one that we just looked at before this one, but 994 is significant, and this will be sufficient to bring all sorts of nasty impacts, so we'll be watching very closely. By Thursday afternoon on the 20th, we see a little bit more of a widespread area of thunderstorm possibilities as far northward as the Ohio Valley, down through Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, eastern Louisiana there. All of these areas seeing at least isolated thunderstorm activity and probably some chance of severe weather. I would imagine there would be at least a marginal risk in there somewhere. So just an event to watch. Doesn't scream major outbreak to me for this particular event, but things can definitely change. By Friday afternoon, we see that low ends up over kind of like the New England area. We see some Canadian snowfall to the north and mostly just rainfall around for parts of the mid-Atlantic and northeast there. As we keep going, we see another major system for the west bringing snowfall to areas of California, the Sierra Nevada mountains, and even into parts of the Rockies. Here's we're moving into Saturday the 22nd. That low ends up over Colorado and it ends up over Kansas. These lows in this area are especially concerning because I've always said this, but we kind of draw a line and we watch the areas south of the low for potential severe weather. And when they're this far north, you start to unlock the possibilities for, again, one of those hot spots in here that we really just don't want to see severe thunderstorm risks, but we will in the springtime. It just is inevitable. This one ends up being pretty low precipitation for a while until we reach towards like Sunday evening. And then we really start to see these thunderstorms just firing up for Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, Missouri, Kansas, Iowa, Illinois. We are beyond 10 days here, so you want to take it with a grain of salt, but the models have been pretty consistent with these repetitive lows moving through this area. So this would perhaps be, at most, threat number 3 for severe weather. And this one looks less major than the first one, but I would say more major than the second one. Although specifics, once you're beyond 10 days, don't matter too much. We're going to see flip-flops back and forth. Just another time frame to watch for these potential events. And this does move through the deep south. As we reach towards like Tuesday the 25th and into Wednesday the 26th, and we see even the southeast get impacted as that low remains pretty major through the entire model run. The GFS model, I kind of want to just break down the severe weather events. So here's severe weather event number 1, and it looks very similar at first here as we're in like Friday afternoon into Saturday afternoon, and everything looks very, very major. The difference here is look at these thunderstorms arriving for the coastal areas of the east. This is at 8 p.m. as opposed to like 5 a.m. So that is a massive difference in the potential severity of these thunderstorms for these coastal areas like my neck of the woods in southeastern Virginia. That's going to be a massive difference probably in the potential intensity of these thunderstorms. At 6, 7 p.m., especially since we just switched the clocks forward, I guess, or backwards, I don't know. Either way, we get more sunlight later into the day. So I feel like these storms could be still intensifying 5, 6, 7 p.m. But if they hit at 5 a.m., you've had hours where these storms just have to kind of try to maintain. So it will make a pretty big difference. We do see this other low move in, and it does bring some thunderstorms again to the Midwest, some of the plains, Ohio Valley. And then as it moves eastward, we actually see more and more impacts from this one, even to where we're seeing the southeast coast by Thursday, the 20th, seeing some thunderstorms from that. We get colder air after this. The GFS model's been a lot more bullish on cold. By Monday the 24th, we have a low way up there in the northern plains and upper Midwest, and this does bring a cold front with it. More thunderstorms moving across the south central states into parts of the Ohio Valley, Midwest, deep south, and even towards the southeast again. And then we actually get a major snowstorm in the Northeast and Ohio Valley here around the 26th, 27th. Please take it with a grain of salt. It's happening right at the end of the model run. And I can almost guarantee you that that will not happen exactly in that way. But we do get another major low across parts of the northern plains and more thunderstorms firing up. So on this model, we might have 4 or 5 potential severe weather events over the coming, let's call it 15 days. So very, very active, especially considering we're still in the very early portion of the severe weather season. Typically, March has severe weather, but it's typically nothing compared to April and May. But this looks very comparable to a April or May, so could be a bad sign for the upcoming and really, at this point, ongoing severe weather season. Looking at the total precipitation, we do see a little bit of a decrease over the west, but really for the most part, it is still above average. And then the east, we do see a bit of an increase where a lot of these areas that were doing decent on these maps over the past few days, they actually have kind of seen an uptick, and I think that overall we're seeing more above average than below average in this area now. So let's just take a look at that. And as you can see, again, the west is still above average overall, but it's not quite as intense as it once was. And then a lot of these areas, especially, I'll draw in the most above average areas, but it's going to be something like this. And this shape could obviously change a lot. Like, these areas seem drier for some reason along that Appalachian mountain range. Could certainly see an uptick there and just see purely this whole area above average. The model can, flip-flop on a few details like that over time, but for the most part, this is the upcoming look. Looking at the total snowfall in the European model, which I agree with highly, we see lots of mountainous west snowfall, decent chances for the northern and even central plains into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes, but really we're left with almost no chance of snowfall here throughout the Ohio Valley, Mid-Atlantic, Northeast, and especially not areas even further south than that. So I highly agree with this. I see the upcoming pattern is very warm, very stormy, but the GFS model I think is just too bullish on the cold, which I have noticed over the last few weeks since we were in late February, that this model has been, or not this one, the GFS one, has been wanting to show the cold returning, and it has failed time and time again. And whenever you can pick up on a trend like that, it's important to keep in mind for the next time it tries to show cold. It's kind of like a, hey, let's pump the brakes type thing. Doesn't mean it's completely wrong, but it's a sign that it could be, and it's a sign that we should maybe lean that way. Here's the GFS model where, again, it would almost perfectly agree for the west and the north central states, other than this snowstorm, this major one that hits right at the tail end of the model run. And is this possible? Certainly, but with the very warm pattern and only 1 or 2 day cold windows, it is going to be really, really hard for this to happen. Typically, it's already a long shot to see major snowstorms. You have to have a few ingredients in place. I would say a good analogy would be like archery. Let's say you're aiming for a target, and that's all the things that need to happen for the model run and for a snowstorm to eventually happen is that arrow has to hit the target. It's very far away, let's put it that way, because it does take a lot, and it is, we see them happen over a 3, 4, 5 month period, but it takes those ingredients coming together, and overall, statistically, on a single given example, it is hard to happen. But when we see these just very small cold windows with very warm overall pattern, I would say, let's imagine that target is moving back and forth really quickly, and you're having to shoot the arrow and it has to hit that moving target. It becomes incredibly more difficult. It has to hit a smaller window, just overall long shot. I think it's the perfect way to put it. Let's take a look at the Storm Prediction Center outlook here, and this is the day one for today on Wednesday, and they all go through the next morning. So when we look at the Wednesday outlook, you got to remember it goes through about like 8 a.m. the next day. So this goes through 8 a.m. Thursday. We have a general thunderstorm risk here for parts of California and parts of coastal Oregon, also parts of inland Oregon and Washington and parts of Idaho. The bigger threat will be this area over the southern plains and into a bit of the deep south, where we have that general thunderstorm risk in the lighter green. And all of those general thunderstorm risks just means that there's a chance of thunderstorms, of a pretty elevated one, but no severe weather is expected. But they have been wrong before, obviously, and you really want to pay attention, especially if there is a strong thunderstorm coming towards your area. Doesn't mean severe weather will for sure not happen. So please heed every watch warning and advisory in there. We do have this level 1 marginal risk in the darker green, where we expect isolated severe weather, and then the yellow here for parts of Oklahoma, Arkansas, Louisiana, and Texas. That is where we expect scattered about severe weather to begin to be possible in there for the day and evening tonight. Tomorrow for Thursday into Friday, we have these general thunderstorm risk areas hanging out in the west again. We also have a deeper south threat that mostly looks like a general thunderstorm risk with a marginal risk in there. So again, level 1. You still want to take it seriously. Some strong thunderstorms to even severe will be occurring in that area tomorrow through the night. And then for day 3, we finally have our first categorical outlook for this upcoming severe weather outbreak. This will be for Friday, March 14th into the morning of Saturday the 15th. And if you remember on the models, this first day is mostly in the evening. So keep in mind this will mostly be late on Friday into early on Saturday is my current thoughts. And we have the general thunderstorm risk area. We have the marginal risk here in the darker greens, level 1, isolated severe weather. The yellow, which is very large, encompassing a lot of the upper Midwest, Ohio Valley, deep south. All these areas expecting scattered about severe weather reports. And then we have a very large enhanced risk area, level 3, where, Missouri, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Arkansas, and even a little bit of Iowa are involved here. And we really want to watch this carefully. This is where a little bit more widespread severe weather will be possible to even likely. So we want to take this very seriously. And this is a large area. I suspect that we will end up with an enhanced risk for this one at the end of the day, but there is room for a moderate risk to be added if things start to look worse. So this could be even worse than it already looks. The following days. So let's take a look at the day 4 outlook. It looks like this. The extended day outlooks are probabilistic. We don't get those categories. So we get a 15% area and a 30% area. And typically, in more minor events, they don't even issue these long-range outlooks. So this has been around for days now and definitely concerning. The yellow area roughly translates to a slight risk, so a level 2 risk of severe weather. And then this orange area for Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Tennessee, parts of Georgia, and Florida, that roughly translates to an enhanced risk. And this is the particular day, Saturday into Sunday morning, where we are watching for the worst of it, perhaps, for this deep south area, where I think we probably will get a moderate risk of severe weather, and we will possibly be seeing a high risk. I think that we could be seeing a high-end severe weather event to that degree. As we take a look at day 5, this will be for Sunday, March 16th into the morning of Monday, the 17th. And again, models do disagree with the timing a little bit on this Sunday to Monday threat, the final day of this severe weather event. But right now, Florida, Georgia, all the way to the coast, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, up through Maryland and D.C., parts of West Virginia, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Delaware in there all have what looks to be a slight risk on the way for Sunday into Monday. So again, level 2 risk of severe weather, and there is room for an upgrade to enhance in there somewhere, but right now I'm leaning towards slight for the end result of this one. I think slight risk, but there is definitely a large slight risk area, and typically when there's these very large areas, you will see upgrades in the middle, but it doesn't happen every time. Just something to watch out for. We don't have any outlooks beyond that, but this is when we're going to break into some of the interesting stuff. Like this, the CSU MLP. This is model guidance. It's from Colorado State University. So again, it is more of like an experimental tool, but it does actually oftentimes reflect what the Storm Prediction Center calls for a lot. A lot of this uses historic data, so it's more like analogs based on the conditions. There is some models thrown in there. And we're working with the probability outlooks here, but I can translate it to categories for you guys. The brown, this is for Wednesday, this issued Wednesday. I was like, that's today. This is for Saturday into Sunday. So this is that deep south threat. The brown area is your marginal risk area. The yellow area would be your slight risk area. The red area would be your enhanced risk area. The light purple would be a moderate risk, so a very large one from Mississippi into Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, and even Kentucky. And then that deep purple area, kind of like a magenta purplish, is where a high risk is being suggested from this output. Keep in mind, I want to remind you guys again, this is not from the Storm Prediction Center. This is not an official outlook at all. This is just using historic data and model guidance, and it could absolutely be wrong, but it's bad to see this calling for this, at least a moderate risk, a very widespread one at that, and even pointing towards a high risk. So really, really bad looking. The hatched area is in there where this particular model thinks there would be a hatched risk. Just really not a good look. And here's another tool. This is again a experimental analog based severe weather guidance, and it does use the GEFS model kind of for its data, which is the GFS ensemble model. A little bit limited only using the GFS model, especially since I think it's wrong with the long range guidance, not particularly for this storm, but as we move beyond it. But we do get the same kind of output here where we have a 10% in the yellow, 15 in the orange, 30 in this kind of deeper orange, and then 45 in that red area for parts of Alabama, Mississippi, a little bit of Louisiana and Florida as well. That would translate to a moderate risk. So both of these products suggesting a moderate risk at least, but one of the two even suggesting as high as a high risk. Really not a good look. I think that we are in for a multiple day major severe weather event once again, but I think this one looks more major than the previous one that happened. When was that? Like a week ago. So really buckle up, really pay close attention, because this could be a serious severe weather event in my opinion. We'll watch and see what happens together. So be sure to subscribe. We upload mostly every single day. You can even hit the bell icon for daily notifications when we upload so you never miss one. Be sure to like the video if you did enjoy it. Leave a comment down below, and I'll see you guys in the next video.